Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank you for holding this hearing today. And I want to thank my colleagues for being here. This is important. This is one of our responsibilities. We talked earlier about what this committee is supposed to be doing. And one thing is to ensure that well-qualified candidates, and I think all three of these are great examples of that, who have waited a long, long time, have the opportunity to serve their country. And in particular, the State Department's understaffed, and they need help. So I'm glad that these three individuals have chosen to step up and serve, and I think we've got to be sure that we are addressing this backlog. And again, I appreciate my colleagues being here from both sides of the aisle and the chairman for holding this hearing. I've got a letter here regarding C.J. Mahoney. Some of you have seen it, I think. It's a letter of recommendation. It's a bipartisan tribute to C.J., signed by former USTR and State Department officials who served in the George H.W. Bush, Clinton, W. Bush, and Obama administrations. And I'd ask, Mr. Chairman, having delivered this to your staff already, this be unanimous consent that this be part of the record.
It will be included.
I've got some perspective on CJ's background, having served at the State Department Legal Advisor's Office back when I was in law school, and then some 22 or so years later being U.S. Trade Representative. His most recent job was being deputy there and did a great job on USMCA and other matters, as has been said. As our colleagues have said during the introductions of CJ, he's particularly well suited for this role. His background, his experience, his accomplishments, his intellect, his judgment, and I would say his temperament and bipartisan approach that we've seen even today is important. So let's be sure and move quickly on this nomination as well as the other two that I plan to support today because, again, we want these good people to be in place helping our country at this time. CJ, my question to you is about the ICC. The International Criminal Court has made a recent decision to investigate Israel for alleged crimes in the West Bank and also in Jerusalem, also in Gaza. And as you know, Israel is not even a signatory to the Rome Statute. Second, the ICC has no jurisdiction over disputed territory, has not in the past, and under its own rules can only initiate actions that are brought by states. And this action was brought by the Palestinian Authority, not a state. So I have worked with my colleague, Ben Cardin, who is here today, to put together a letter to your future boss, I hope, Secretary Pompeo, on this issue. By the way, it received enormous bipartisan support. 67 of our colleagues signed the letter, including, I think, all members of the committee who are here today. I would ask you about this because, to me, this is an example not just of them not following the rules at the ICC, but being politicized. And the politicization of the ICC has been a concern in Republican and Democrat administrations alike. That's why, frankly, we have not joined. So I'd ask you about this. I would also ask you about the ICC's recent decision to pursue an investigation into war crimes against U.S. and allied troops for actions in Afghanistan. Again, even though the United States, in this case, is not even a signatory to the Rome Statute. So, if confirmed, do you pledge to continue to push back against these efforts by the ICC to expand its legal mandate and to protect the United States and its troops and our allies from politically motivated prosecutions?
Absolutely, Senator.
I appreciate that. Ambassador Trujillo, we've been hard hit by this opioid epidemic in my home state of Ohio and around the country, and a number of us in the committee have focused on this issue. Unfortunately, what we're seeing right now with the coronavirus pandemic is more addiction, more overdoses, more overdose deaths. And this is troubling. It's partly because of the isolation, I think. I think it's also partly because of the lack of access to treatment, at least face-to-face. The DEA just came out with a threat assessment, their most recent one, saying that meth, crystal meth, cocaine, heroin, are all predominantly produced in the areas you're going to have a jurisdiction over, Central America, South America, and smuggled into the U.S. They've also made the point that the deadliest opioid, the fentanyl, is increasingly coming in over our southern border. We've got a role here at the State Department to crack down on this, the transnational criminal organization activity. What do you plan to do in your new job to cut down on this drug trafficking across our borders? Specifically, what do you plan to do, and will this be part of what you view as your mission in this new job?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Absolutely. I think it's the forefront of our mission is keeping Americans safe. I agree with you that fentanyl is by far the most deadly. A lot of those precursor chemicals, unfortunately, are coming from China. It would be my responsibility, if confirmed by this committee, by the Senate, of working with our Mexican counterparts to identify those precursor criminals, to disrupt those transnational criminal organizations, and working with some of the tools we have in place through INL and other law enforcement agencies to make sure that we keep those drugs off of our American streets.
Thank you. I hope you'll make that a personal commitment and a passion in this job, because I think there's a great opportunity for us to do more working with DHS and State Department. One final question, if I could, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador Billingsley, there's so many issues to talk to you about, but one would be hypersonic weapons. You might know that in the NDAA, the legislation currently before us in the Senate, we have language, Senator Brown and I, to increase the need for hypersonic testing facilities to include non-DOD facilities. There's one in Ohio called Plumbrook that is ideally situated to help. But what do you think about hypersonic weapons? What are our adversaries' capabilities here? I hear some things that, frankly, are very concerning. And what can we do to ensure that we're ready to meet the global challenge of hypersonic weapon competition?
Thank you, Senator. You're putting your finger on one of the new emerging technologies that's going to redefine both our conventional strike capabilities as well as ultimately the nuclear deterrent forces, at least with the Russians and possibly the Chinese. I would say, without having looked at the specifics of your legislation, we have an urgent need to robustly test a number of emerging hypersonic glide vehicle technologies that are coming online, both with the Army, the Navy, and potentially even the Air Force. We are, I think it's fair to say, behind when it comes to the Chinese testing program in particular, and the Russians have actually already deployed 2 nuclear hypersonic weapons on their heavy ICBMs. And I expect more to come as the Russians bring online an even larger ICBM called the Sarmat, where they'll be able to hang multiple of these weapons on them. Hypersonics offer a number of advantages. The United States, I do not believe, is pursuing nuclear weapons in that respect, but conventional armed hypersonics. And these will be, I think, important equalizers for us, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region.
Thank you. We'll get you the language of that amendment, and appreciate your commitment to ensuring we can stay up with the competition.
Thank you, Senator Portman. The